Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I am Farooq Patafi. Yesterday, when we were talking about political issues of Pakistan, we said, and I tried actually to promise as well, I tried to do it in the program as well, that we will take stock of the DGISPR's yesterday's speech. It was very important because to a person like me, it seems like an inflection point. On one side, we heard the talk of India-Pakistan relationship and how it can be improved and what has been happening in the past. The second important aspect was Pakistan's fight against terrorism. That was also very important because we were given numbers and certain other aspects were also explored. And it was quite illuminating, it was quite clarifying. And the third aspect that was part of that presentation that the DGISPR gave, and then it came up in the question answer session as well, was on PTM and its politics. The claim or the accusation at this moment is that it, or at least the questions were, where does it get its money from? And the DGISPR actually identified certain dates and days and identified certain intelligence agencies, one of India, one of Afghanistan, and asked, did you get this money or not? And that is quite important because then one has to look at what is going on under the hood of Pakhtun Tahaffuz movement or PTM. We are going to talk about all these matters and more in today's program. But remember, they are very important angles. Yesterday, almost immediately after DGISPR's speech, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari also addressed the media, and there he actually created a special angle, so to speak. He said that the government should be talking about these matters, not DGISPR. Amazingly, this has been going on. These press briefings have been there for quite some time, and more or less the contents have been the same for past 5-6 years. But at that time, People's Party and various other parties were, perhaps not that much aggressive or angry, and that's why they hardly ever criticized such press briefings. But yesterday we heard that there is a different kind of emphasis. That is one aspect. The second thing is, while we are talking about this, one has to remember that in this overall mishmash of things, all institutions are connected, and we are fighting a fight for the survival of the country. So in that situation, is it too wrong for a state institution to actually explain certain aspects? These are very important issues, but how political parties view the issues that were raised and the press talk as well. We are going to try to discuss all these matters. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by Jameel Ahmad Khan Sahab, MNA of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the ruling party. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Senator Sitara Ayaz Sahiba, who represents Awami National Party, an opposition party, but essentially from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, at least it is dominant in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There they formed more than one governments as well in the past, and they have representation at the center as well. Next to her is Barrister Mohammad Ali Saif Saab, who is a senator, a PhD scholar as well, and also a lawyer of renown. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Jameel Ahmad Khan Sahab, I have to start with you and I have to ask you. There are two very important questions. One was asked by Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. He says that why is army speaking on your government's behalf? Why are you not speaking? And then there's another question. If there are accusations, if there is evidence against PTM, why haven't you apprehended the people already?
Thank you, Farooq, for letting me speak on this topic. Mr. Bilawal Zardari Sahab is confused. Weeks ago, he had a statement where he says that army is running the government. Okay. And yesterday he changed his stance all of a sudden, and he says that why the government is asking the army to do political statements.
Okay.
These two are different statements from one another. So I don't think so there is any logic in his statement.
Okay.
He will always give a statement against any step taken by the government, or once there was escalation. Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari Sahab, I have a lot of regard for him. He is an Oxford qualified gentleman. But I told you that there's something went wrong with him, that during the escalation, once we had tensions with India, he gave statements which were not beneficial for the state,
Okay.
which were not supporting the steps taken by the government of Pakistan or by army. So I don't give much weightage to whatever he said yesterday.
But somehow he actually framed the debate, and I kept on watching television channels or private channels, and this more or less was the angle that every anchor was taking.
Well, I take it that way, that he is trying his best to link any step taken by army, he links it to the government,
Yeah.
and anything taken by the government, he links it to the army.
Okay.
So I don't think so.
Are they not both
Well,
part of the same thing?
Well,
the executive?
Well, it's part of the executive.
Yeah.
He should understand it, but giving it that, giving it an impression that government is trying to deliver a political statement through army, I think that's a wrong perception.
Okay.
It's a matter of national security.
Okay.
And in the absence of national security advisor, I think it's the regime of army to talk about the security and the intelligence.
Thank you very much. I love PTI because it keeps on bringing many things on its own self. You just brought up the issue of National Security Advisor. Why don't we have one?
No, but I think
Why don't we have one?
I don't know much about this, but the issue was that this we have the interior minister, he's a qualified person, and then we have the army dealing with all such issues.
Yeah, but why not NSA? I mean, we used to have an NSA. Now we don't.
No, you are wrong here. We had NSA only once,
No, actually.
or maybe twice, but not. It is not a routine that.
We had NSA during Pervez Musharraf Saab's time. We had NSA during People's Party's time. We had an NSA during half of PMLN's time. And then we had NSA during the caretaker time as well.
Okay, so I stand corrected here, but I don't have much knowledge about this, but I say that in the absence of an NSA, I think the competent authority to discuss or comment on national security will be the ISPR.
Right. That is an important point, well taken. I have another question that I raised earlier, but let me bring in Sitara Ayaz Sahiba. Ma'am, why does it seem that political parties keep on projecting their anger, their frustration onto the military and the armed forces of Pakistan? Why is it that every political party has to essentially see everything that comes from the army as a political issue, rather than looking it through the prism of national security?
Actually, on national security, I think that no party is saying anything against the army or the ISPR, nothing. It is basically we are blaming the government. If you are giving space to someone, if you are not doing anything, there must be someone to represent your country or to say something. Like right now, we cannot see the government anywhere. The government is silent on every national issues. They are silent.
I'm glad that you raised this point.
Yeah, they
Again,
are silent.
you brought this issue to the fore yourself. Remember that day when you were sitting in this program and you and other participants were criticizing the then information minister of PTI, that he's too critical and he speaks on everything. Now you have the other kind of attitude.
No.
And now you're complaining.
No, I'm not complaining. The way he was speaking, like it wasn't on the national issues. I'm talking about the national issues.
Okay.
The national issues, the government is silent. Okay. If they are silent, if you are giving space to someone, then somebody has to say something.
Can you identify a couple of national issues?
Health is a big national issue. Yesterday, I think the ISPR spoke on education also.
No, he
If
was
that is-
no. He was talking.
Let me correct it.
Okay.
It were the reforms that the
I-
army
I-
have initiated in the tribal belt.
No, actually,
In
he
war
was
torn
he was
areas.
speaking
Okay.
under the purview of National Action Plan.
Yes.
Exactly.
And there reforms.
But let me, okay. The National Action Plan is the government is supposed to implement. There is only one component which the army has to.
Army is part of the government.
No, army, what I'm trying to say, the rest is the government. So if you are not doing it, naturally somebody has to do that. This is my point. When you give a chance to someone, then why should we complain? I mean, we are criticizing basically the government.
Okay.
The government is not taking steps. The government is like they are busy in the petty issues all the time. Like today what happened in the National Assembly. So it is always happening.
What happened in National Assembly?
Today on that bill of 18 years,
Yeah.
that child bill, there were 2-3 things which they made it so complicated. That was the government people. Let me speak. Their Prime Minister on his first speech, very categorically he said that I will be for every such kind of legislation which will be for the people.
Okay.
And then when you come to the National Assembly without, this is a cabinet decision when you are bringing, and your law minister is already there. When the law minister is, and he is supposed to give full briefing to their ministers when
Right.
they are coming to the parliament. So whenever, it's not the first time, their ministers are, one is saying something else, the other stand up and they will say something else. So these are the things, when they are not doing anything, then I
but
am
you
not,
have to-
I am not blaming at this
Ma'am,
stage
with due respect, you
ISPR,
have
I am
to-
blaming the government.
No,
Because the
but,
government is
since
not
you-
taking
point
any
there.
I have to
action
go
on
to Barrister
National
Saab.
Action Plan.
I have to go to Barrister Saab, but ma'am, with due respect, you'll appreciate the fact that on these matters, because of the religious element in this society and every party, there is a divide on these issues.
Exactly.
So you cannot say that political parties will
But
not be divided.
not your cabinet people. This is for the first time we are actually.
It's democracy.
I
No,
can
no,
remind you
what
many
you-
a times,
no,
but
not the cabinet.
let me go to Barrister Saab. Barrister Saab, one question that usually occurs to me, when you go abroad and when you listen to the military of the other countries, even I'm talking about the Americans, I'm talking about British, I don't know, they speak very openly about everything. They have an opinion, they are human beings, they are citizens, and they are also part of the same society and the government. So they express themselves very openly. Yes, they don't openly criticize their own government, but they make all the statements that are there. Why is it that everything becomes so political in Pakistan?
Well, we are a politically polarized society, and if you look at the behavioral and attitudinal aspects of Pakistani politicians and the way politics is being conducted here in Pakistan, it is always based on emotionally charged slogans and rhetoric, and usually devoid of any substance. But there is a statement to be made, and that statement is made irrespective of the fact whether it's rational or irrational. And then the debate ensues, and that debate then is called politics. Basically, this is how our politics is. Number one. Number two, insofar as the statement or the press conference of DG ISPR of yesterday's is concerned, I think if you look at the overall contextual paradigm of this press conference, it was formally and directly aimed at highlighting the achievements so far in the context of National Action Plan.
Right.
Whether or not they were achieved,
Yeah.
what needs to be done in future, and how to achieve those targets that were identified and unfortunately not being accomplished so far, even after the passage of several years after adoption of this NAP.
Yeah.
Now, I think that all those issues have propped up from that particular subject matter, which is the National Action Plan. he discussed multifold issues like, for example, madrasa reforms, and then putting them under the Ministry of Education, and then also PTM also crops up actually in the same debate, because
Yeah.
PTM is also in an
Talking
area
about
where
this
there is an active military operation going on, and
Yeah.
therefore anything related to that area becomes a national security issue, and therefore I don't think that anything was out of context in that. Insofar as your discussion on Bilawal's argument is concerned, with Bilawal Sahab said yesterday in his speech,
Yeah.
I think for a politician, if he has to attack or give a punch somewhere, he has to find a place to punch.
Okay.
And for him, I don't think that there is anything out of ordinary in his statement. The reason he probably came up and had a press briefing and kind of said that, it's the army which is doing the government's job. I think it was probably for the reason that DGISPR, in one of his responses to a journalist sitting in the gathering, he referred indirectly to People's Party being supportive of Rawan War. While
Yeah.
responding to Salim Safi's question, actually. So my understanding is that for Bilawal probably
And
then,
People's Party actually called, Zardari Sahab called Rawan War Hamara Bacha.
yeah, he did. So that is why
Our own son.
DGISPR also mentioned that he was somebody's bacha at one particular point in time, and that is true. There is no denying the fact that even Zardari Sahab himself has actually admitted that. Number one. So I think that for Bilawal, he had probably he was actually responding to what was said about him or his party indirectly.
Right.
So therefore, I don't think that there is any alarm. I don't find it alarming, basically. It was a response that was to be given.
But this is
Yeah.
you have been part of the legislature for quite some time, and you have been here. One question that occurs to me, especially regarding the madrasa reform,
Yeah.
that we have been fighting terrorism for like 17 years now, and it was one existential problem. And every time we discussed what were the threats and where it might emanate from, madrasas also, came into discussion. Now the question is the fact that madrasas were being regulated by Ministry of Industries. That was news to all of us. Does it shock you?
Well, every day we hear such news. Every information that we get from the government side usually is news, alarming news rather.
Okay.
And therefore, I personally think that this shows the non-serious attitude of all the governments. I won't blame the present government for that. It's the previous governments
Yeah,
as well.
they-
I mean, I think this shows a non-serious attitude of the government vis-a-vis madrasa reforms. A lot has been said about it. A lot of politics has been kind of centered on this madrasa reform vis-a-vis religious parties, and religious parties have been playing this card as well. But this shows how serious we are in relation to these serious issues. And I'll just make one rectification in the statement that you earlier made, that terrorism is existential threat for us. I think radicalization and extremism is the existential threat, whereas terrorism is just a manifestation which at times gets controlled and at times it just goes out, blows out of proportion. But the issue is that National Action Plan and yesterday's conference, I'll then link it up to that. The concern of the military high command in relation to non-implementation of National Action Plan is very serious, because they have to be, because they are the ones who are taking the direct brunt of all the manifestations of terrorism or radicalization or extremism for that matter. So I think that whether we put madrasas under the Ministry of Education or I mean, we must streamline madrasas. They are not alien people in this society. They are part of the society. We must own them and we must bring them into mainstream education systems so that they get benefit and we also as a society get benefit from that.
Your best minds be actually locked down there. And the problem is that when they actually graduate from those madaris or seminaries, they end up being Maulvis. They could be something else as well, right?
Yeah, they can
This
become
is a good point. But Jameel Ahmed Sahab, money is a big problem. Your government, especially Prime Minister, sometimes he goes to FATA, sometimes erstwhile FATA, sometimes he goes to elsewhere, other places, and he keeps on pledging money. Question is how to get that money, because at this moment we are facing a very dire straits when it comes to economy.
No, Farooq, situation is not that worse where if PM has announced a package and that comes in due course of time, we are already, the finance ministry is planning for this. It's not that the PM have announced it without any planning. There are factors behind this. I would just add one thing that Senator Sitara said, that the army is doing government's job.
Okay.
I accept this thing that the army is doing, and army has been doing government's job whenever it's a natural disaster, once it's the floods coming, once it's the earthquake coming. Even if you have to train your police, you give it to the army. Even if you have to...
might I add something here? It is not called government's job, it is called in aid of civil
Yes.
power.
Yes,
Yes.
but it's
It
government's
is,
job.
but it
it
is a
is
regular
not.
call
It
of
is
all
not.
army.
No.
Exactly. And at the same time, I don't know, why do we differentiate between government and army? Army is the government, it's our army. It's not
not
that
saying,
a stand-alone thing, like it's the people from Pakistan joins the army, our sons, our relatives, they join this army and
We
they serve
never
this
said
country.
that
So
that
making
they are
it
not.
stand-alone, that government is using army, no, it's not like this. Army and government, yes, we are on the same
No,
platform.
but here's a question. I mean, was there any harm if we would have heard our interior minister talk about these internal issues as well? If our defense minister spoke about India, if for that matter there are other elements, for example, PTM, interior minister could talk about it, IB chief could be there, somebody else from the government side?
I agree to this proposal, but I think you need a subject specialist who knows everything,
Yeah,
who
interior
can answer
minister-
your questions.
Your
who
interior minister is
No,
not a specialist.
As far as FATA is concerned, as far as national security is concerned, you know, it's not only the internal matter it is here.
Yeah.
There are foreign intelligence agencies involved.
But three ministers coming together, interior, defense, foreign, and they could have answered all the questions.
I think you know, some people are never satisfied. Had this been done by the government or the defense ministry, and you know, for the government, it's the information ministry,
Okay.
which should be speaking on behalf of the government.
Not essentially. I mean, ministries have their spokesman.
You know, there has to be a chain of command. There has to be a procedure for this. So, had this been done by the government, I think people must have questioned, especially the journalists, that if it's being handled by
Especially
the
the
army.
journalists.
Yes, especially the journalists, because you.
It
people
is our
must-
job. I
it
mean,
is your
we have to ask
job. It is
questions.
your job, and we do not deny this that it's your job. But I think the people who, you know, the DG ISPR said that he was the first one to interact with PTM, the first one.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a reality. We accept it, and that's why they are dealt with, and they had been dealing with as per the law, according to the constitution of Pakistan.
Although in this aspect, I do understand that PTM has existed before your party actually came into power.
Exactly.
But your party was ruling at least Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which actually took in the erstwhile FATA as well. So maybe your CM could also interact with them. But here's the issue.
Now they are. Why not? at that
Civilians
time?
are
stop.
in touch with them, sir, and it's not the political.
I'm
government
coming
has
to
been
you
in
and
touch
then
with-
Barrister
And
Saab.
let me add here, sir. Even the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, before being elected the Prime Minister, he attended one of the meeting with this PTM,
Yeah.
and where, you know,
Public
journalists for
rallies,
public rally was there, and their demands, they were genuine, and we even the ISPR says that whatever they demanded, they were genuine and they were handling it. But now the narrative they are trying to build up, that is against the state now, whatever they're building up now.
Yeah, and they are very serious accusations. We are going to talk about them as well. But ma'am, I'm coming to you. Barrister Saab, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the discussion that was between you and Jamil. You know, the science of civil-military relationships is now a very well researched discipline, and my understanding is that wherever there is a vacuum in the civil power or in the civil administration, it is always filled by the military organizations, one way or the other. My understanding is, and when I look at the situation in KP, and especially vis-a-vis FATA and PTM and this radicalization in Taliban and all that, Raddul Fasad, in the aftermath of Raddul Fasad now, I think that the proactive role by the government is non-existent. It is the government, whosoever is in power, I'm not blaming PTI or PMLN or whosoever, but whosoever is in power is supposed to be taking the lead role, and the army must be kept in the shadow of the government. So that if there is an attack, a political attack by the opponents, it should be taken, the brunt should be taken by the government, not the army. Over here, the problem is that there is such a big vacuum, such a great vacuum, that the government doesn't perform that way. They should be they are the ones who should be addressing the people's concerns.
So should we be
Madara
talking
scheme-
about capacity building of the government?
I don't know how much capacity they need to, they require to be, developed. I mean,
That's a good
there is
point.
no end to it, right? Who is building the army's capacity? I'm not here defending the army, but I'm just saying, who is defending building their capacities? They are going through a normal process of training and working. Over here, when it comes to the government, we always say there is a lack of capacity. So if there is a lack of capacity, then go back homes and do whatever your private jobs you were doing before coming into power. If you sit in the seat of power, then you are duty bound to perform and to take your responsibility head on, not
right. Senator
remain in the shadows.
Yeah.
That is why the army has to intervene.
You are right, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, now what Jamil says that we are on one page. That is, I think, great if you are. But let me give you an example of the civil military when they are on one page. When there was in Swat, what happened, you remember that. Yeah. At that time, the civil and military, they were on one page. The military did their job, the civil government did their job. And then within a few months, the IDPs, they went back.
Yeah,
they
but
settled
civilian
down.
control was
The
not restored because civilians didn't have capacity.
No, didn't have capacity, but that was the role of to fight against the terrorism. Terrorist was the role of army, and that then to run the government after that was the civil government. Right now, you know what happened. The civil government, it was not their government at that time. The civil government was not there at all.
Okay.
In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or at the federal level. They were
When?
not the last 5 years when they were in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and here it was PMLN. They were
not when you were in government in Khyber
no, at that time there was the terrorist attack was only in Swat.
Yeah.
And I give you example of
No,
that. We
your-
both were on the same page at
Your
that
party-
time. The
Your
army
party leaders, for
and-
example, Mia Iftikhar and
Yeah.
others,
He-
showed
he
us
was-
great courage, and they
Yes.
were leaders when
Yes.
it comes to terrorism
So
and
what
fighting.
I'm trying to say, I'm not criticizing them.
But
I
your
am
CM was
actually,
not.
this is a vacuum created by the civil government. When they failed, what happened in these camps, the IDP camps, the people who came out from Waziristan, that was a job of civil government to took care of them, not the army. So when they didn't, so the army had to, because they were
Someone
not there.
had to, someone had to.
So we are not actually, when he said that this is our army, this is Pakistani army, we are not blaming them. Actually, the role of civil government is missing. We are talking about that the civil government should take action, the political action actually.
No, but
the military,
you'll
they
agree
have-
with me when it comes to the Prime Minister himself. He has been very, proactive. He
About
goes
what?
everywhere and he speaks about all these matters.
About
but
what?
the new ministers that you have inducted, or for example, Defense Minister, others, they should be speaking up as well, right?
That is, the good administrator is that he should keep a good team with himself. This is not only when you are talking.
No, it is a subjective
right,
debate whether their
no,
team is
it
good or not.
yeah.
But your government should be more vocal, should be proactive. If it is not, army has to actually compensate.
Farouk, you
This
just
is
quoted
their
that
argument.
our Prime Minister is very proactive. We have initiated FATA reforms. FATA merger is in process. The
You
PM
were part of
You were
people
part
who
of that.
initiated.
Actually, that was
And
all
no,
parties.
whatever, but like the government is now, we have a proactive role there. At the same time, it's I think never happened in the last 10 years that the Prime Minister visiting the FATA and tribal belt so frequently. Prime Minister has great concern about the situation in FATA, and he is very keen to have the FATA reforms. Even
Former FATA.
Yes,
It's
not
no more
formal
FATA.
FATA. And no, it's actually the merger is in process, and it will become part of KP.
Yeah, it
So-
is part of KP.
Exactly.
It has to be mentioned.
And as Senator Sitara says that the government role is missing, I think government role was missing since long, and now in very short span of time, the PTI government have initiated steps practically we have, we are doing practically. She says
Like
everything
what?
was good in their regime and everything went worse in our regime in KP. Well, it's not. There could be shortcomings during the time of PTI in KP, and there were shortcomings during your time also. So the point was that whenever there will be a gap, civil government will not be performing the role, someone have to. So the army will have to step in and fill that gap and will have to serve the people.
So
Otherwise,
this is what we are also saying.
so we
yes,
agree on this.
Because the civil
Yeah, but
government role is
how are
missing.
you planning to build capacity of your government so that we can hear the interior minister, the defense minister more? We hear the foreign minister who's very articulate, but other two must also be very articulate, but they can talk about these matters.
Farooq, we have a very capable, newly appointed
Interior
minister. He had been, he's an experienced, he's an ex-army person also. And
He's an ex-army officer, he has headed IB as well.
Exactly.
But usually what happens when you're heading intelligence is that you have the different approach to media, right? You don't speak that much because you're supposed to keep secret.
I think it's hardly a week
Now-
that he's taken over. Give him some time.
yeah.
And I'm sure he gonna make a difference.
Okay.
I'm sure.
No, I'm not questioning difference. I'm talking about talking to us, talking to the media, so that we know what exactly is government's plan.
I will convey your message to him, and
No,
he must speak to media.
We are talking on air.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, thank you very much for conveying, though. Ma'am, regarding India, there's one question that is asked repeatedly, that on India there should be one voice. That army speaks. The government also says the same thing, and we have seen them together on the same page. But Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, some people from your party, some your former allies, like not allies, Maulana Fazlur Rahman was never your ally, right?
No.
But other people from opposition don't seem to belong to the same page on India.
No, but in assembly we saw that all the political parties, they were on the same page during like
In the same
united-
book, not the same page.
No, but they spoke all, and especially my party. I don't think so. There is anything in my party, if it's against like India. Though we believe that we should have a good relation with all our neighbors. But if the
Entire
neighbors
Pakistan
are not,
says we should have good relations.
Good relation. But if there is anything against Pakistan,
Right.
we will stand with whoever are in government. We will stand with them, and this is what we.
Sir, I'm committed.
This is what we showed in the last
Joint session? Yeah,
joint
in the-
session.
yeah.
Yes, our leader Amir Haider, he spoke, and unconditional support to the government we give. So
right.
I think after
But
that there is no other.
do you agree with this perception that opposition has a perception deficit when it comes to India, especially Mian Nawaz Sharif, that somehow he was too close to Modi, and then People's Party, right at that moment, we start criticizing our policy on proscribed organizations, whatever the pace is. Bilawal kept on doing it, right? So is there a perception problem with opposition when it comes to India or not?
I don't think so. In the assembly, I think there is not. Outside assembly, maybe it's a political.
No, then you have forgotten
but
the
in
exchanges between the then finance minister Asad Umar and Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, and
That
they
was
were very
yes,
aggressively
that is again,
criticizing each other.
That is again that the state. I think it's the duty of the state to take all of the opposition along with them. So this is again. I'm not criticizing them, but they have. Still, I think they need more to learn how to run the government and how to. This is, I strongly believe that they need training. They need
the
training.
problem is whenever you say government, Jameel Saab actually raises
I have a
that
point
up to
here.
this point.
You know,
So Jameel Saab,
you know,
please very quickly.
Jameel Saab-
with apology, with great apology, Sitara, I would just add one thing. That isn't this that your Awami National Party, which had the mandate of Pashtuns, of KPK, and even Pashtuns in Karachi, and isn't this that the ANP have failed to address their grievances, and that's why the ANP have been totally rejected.
Is
in
it
this
the subject
no,
of
no,
today's
no,
talk?
it's
not
Are
the
we going
subject.
to?
No,
We
no,
talk
it's
about
the subject.
India's
Jamil sir,
actually.
hang on.
We are not talking about
We are
ANP, PTI and
my
people.
question
Actually,
was
we
about
are
India.
It was about India
And-
and our unconditional support on India. It is not a question of ANP, PTI. If we talk, there are so many other things, and I think you should have a separate program for
Yeah,
that. then.
and we'll have
Yes.
a discussion,
Yes.
although it was his view, he is entitled to that, but it doesn't belong in this discussion.
it is, yeah,
because we
it's-
we are not discussing individual political performances at this moment. But Barrister Saab, why is it that it is so difficult in Pakistan to have one narrative on India? In India, it seems that everybody is parroting the same narrative all the time.
I believe that insofar as opposition to India's attempts to hegemonize this region and to threaten Pakistan, I believe every Pakistani is on the same page.
Right.
We oppose India in all respects, be that on the military front, be that political or in any other context. But my personal view on the discussion that was going on a while ago, I think that your perception, the perception that you generate, is actually linked, very closely linked with your behavior.
Okay.
And your responses and your attitudes in a given situation, and that given situation is actually determined by your positioning in the domain of politics. If you are in the opposition, if you are positioned in the opposition, then your behavior is different as opposed to the behavior that you exhibit when you are in power in the government. For opposition parties to stand along the government in opposing Indian attempts, you may see different types of responses. You may not see a uniform response as you would be expecting or you would like to see. Generally, what happens is that the opposition has its own aches to grind as well with the government party or with any other segment in society. So I think that giving a different response or a slightly different version of events or a slightly different narrative, I don't think that we should take that as a negative. Rather, it's a symbol or a reflection of a healthy debate in the society that we have different opinions, but on India or on the subject matter we are all united.
Yeah, but here's the issue of narratives and the omissions and commissions, right? You're talking about commissions. I'm talking about omissions. For example, Kulbhushan Yadav was arrested. The matter is now in international court.
Yeah.
And we don't hear that much discussion. When Mian Nawaz Sharif was Prime Minister, never mentioned his name. Similarly, I hardly hear anybody, with the exception of Rahman Malik Sahab maybe, from People's Party, hardly anybody talking about Kulbhushan Yadav. Hey, you have something quite visible. You have caught a smoking gun.
Yeah.
So why can't we have the same narrative?
Well, I believe that, and this is my personal take on this matter, that the very fact that we agreed to taking to the case to be taken to the International Court of Justice, in a way has cornered us on not discussing it, because it's a sub judice matter now. There's no point in discussing it politically, because let the ICJ now decide, because while going to the ICJ, it was the prerogative or the choice, discretion of the government of Pakistan.
We could deny.
Yeah, we could have said that, okay, we don't agree with the
Right.
jurisdiction, exercise of jurisdiction by the ICJ.
Do we have such conventions
Yes,
that if
yes,
it is
yes.
with the ICJ,
Yeah.
we cannot discuss it in our drawing room, our studios?
No, you can't, but it's just a general principle, number one. Number two, there is a case going on, there's a different forum now, and the case has taken a completely different angle and dimension. So therefore, discussing it on TV channels would not make any difference now, because
but
the ball is there now. But
I
there is another thing.
assume that you don't watch that many Indian channels, right?
I
And
do.
if,
No,
if
I
you
don't.
I'm happy for you,
Yeah.
because it does remarkable damage to people's,
But I believe that is-
people's brains. It has done, inflicted a lot of damage to my brain. But they are not bound by such, codes of civility. They say whatever they want to.
But Hafiz Sahab, my understanding is, and this is my understanding, which could be wrong, is that I, as a politician, do not take cue and ideas from media, from what is said on the media, because if you do that, then you lose your independent stream of thinking, number one. Number two, let the media say whatever they want to say, that's their opinion, but I would not decide my thinking or my decision. I would not base my decisions on what the media says, because if I start doing that, then I'm simply responding and the initiative gets out of my hand.
Yeah.
One. Second, there is another angle that I would like to say. You said nobody mentioned. I think the minister of this present government, whosoever it was, he said that Kulbhushan has been released probably, or he's no more in Pakistan's custody.
That was slip of tongue.
Right.
That was slip of tongue, I guess.
Yeah, a junior minister, but
Yeah.
regardless.
But it's
Well,
always slip
he's
of tongue,
he's representing the state. So
no, then he said that it was a slip of tongue.
Slip
There
of
was
tongue
an
is very
extensive
famous.
program on that.
I watched that whole program, and a slip of tongue is just one word.
Yeah.
It is not an argument.
Yeah, that can feed into the conspiracy theories in the country. But I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Your conclusion, sir.
My conclusion is that the present situation, and Pakistan is going through a very sensitive time where we have to face FATF in the next month.
Yeah.
15th of May, our FAT will be decided that FATF, what status we get. At the same time, we have to look forward, we have to move forward, we have to be united, whether it's the opposition, whether it's the government. We should have same narrative as far as the national security is concerned. I
Right.
think we should not have any
To
difference
do
over
that,
here.
we perhaps someday will need a national security policy in document, and we don't have one. Ma'am, Senator Sahiba, your take, your conclusion.
Well, I must say that national security, there is no compromise on that, national security, for all of us. And we are same, I think, as far as Pakistan national security is concerned. But we want that the government should also be very sensitive about all these sensitive issues, especially when they are going abroad and when they are talking about, and when he mentioned FATF, we have to be very careful when we are giving statements outside Pakistan.
Right, that is important. Barrister Saab, Senator Saab, your take, sir, your conclusion.
Well, my conclusion is the same. I agree with the other participants. I believe that national security is paramount importance. There is no denying the fact that without giving it that importance that it deserves, we would stand nowhere, number one. But as you said, that we do need a national security policy. Yes, we do need. We need national security policy, rather a national vision on almost all important aspects relating to defense, internal and external situation. We do need that, but
A national
at the
security
moment-
document ideally covers all the bases,
Yes,
and
yes.
that is important, sir. I'm glad that we all agree on that. Barrister Mohammad Ali Sahib, thank you very much, sir, for your time. Senator Sitara Ayaz Sahib, thank you very much for your time as well. Jameel Ahmad Khan Sahib, thank you very much for your time as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. While we can debate everything we want to, one thing is for fact, and that is that in the past 20 years when we were fighting terrorism, one force actually stood for civilization, and all the institutions were supported by that force. And if you recall, in Pakistan we have had a mixed history of institutions. There were military rules as well. 11 years ago, there was a military rule in the country, and then Pakistan has democratized, and now all the institutions are on board. So while we can criticize any statement coming from anywhere, remember the people who are fighting the war right now, their participation, their 2 cents also count. And we should be actually acting on those issues that are actually highlighted, rather than just sitting and criticizing all the issues. Let us hope in coming days we see the kind of unity we need, the kind of unity of purpose and unity of direction. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.